Hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of Meet Marshfield. Marshfield Community Television makes this time available, and if you have any thoughts for the show, give us a call at 837-4384 and we'll see what we can do. Now today's show is quite interesting because we're going to be talking to a young man from the Marshfield Middle School, and he happened to have been in the Mariner issue of a couple of weeks ago by Mary Jane Hanron, and I think many of you have seen it. It's Dan Heine. And this morning in the Globe South, I thought there was a very interesting article, and it kind of plays into what we're talking about today. And this was about using power of youth for good. And there's a number of youngsters in here who are doing a tremendous amount of good in their communities. And it's nice to recognize them once in a while because we hear so often about the few others in the news. But there's so many kids doing some great things. And so today I'd like to welcome to the show Daniel Heine. Very glad to have you here. And the assistant principal at the middle school, and that would be Maureen Kemet. Mrs. Maureen Kemet.
Thank you for having me.
Very glad to have you both here today.
Thank you.
Now, this is kind of an interesting thing because I talked to your dad a week ago because I had him in the show because he is a business coach for businesses. And we got to talking about the article here in the Marshfield Mariner. And I said, you know, that would be a very nice show. Do you think Daniel will come on? He said, well, I'll talk to him. And of course, Daniel is here, so that was good. And then you have wanted to bring with you the assistant principal, Mrs. Kemet. So that's where our show is today. So let's talk a little bit before we get into why you're here and talk about Daniel himself as to how old you are, what grade you're in, brothers and sisters, and so forth.
Well, I'm 14 years old. I'm in 8th grade. I go to Furnace Brook Middle School, and I have a sister, Lisa, who's the vice president of Key Club. She's in the high school, and yeah.
And your dad is in the Kiwanis Club.
Yeah, and my dad's in Kiwanis.
And your mother?
And my mom is a holistic nutritionist.
Right. So it's a very active family in town. And I know there are a lot of active families in town that you just don't hear about. So it's very good to have you here today. And let's talk then about, quickly, the project that you're doing. It's called Project 351. And the 351 stands for what?
It stands for the 351 towns in Massachusetts. And because there's 351 kids that are part of it, because they pick one 8th grader from every town to represent their town in Project 351.
And you are the one from Marshfield.
And I was picked from Marshfield.
All right. Now, what does Project 351 do?
Well, it's an organization that Deval Patrick first came up with when he was elected to governor, and he came up with it so that for kids to kind of like benefit Massachusetts. So.
Okay, and so this particular program that you are now pretty much in charge of here in Marshfield does what?
Well, I'm going to be organizing different activities for Marshfield to take part in. So, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any idea what some of those activities are?
Well, one of them is the spring greening. That's from March 10th to April 10th. That we're going to be collecting new and gently used clothing, coats and clothing from newborn to adult large, and then shoes from newborn to adult size 10. And that's to help the kids that are living in poverty in Massachusetts.
Which I got some information on that, which I think we'll share with the audience, and that is that a lot of the spring greening is to collect gently used clothing and shoes for children who face the unfair challenges of poverty across the state, like you said. And some of the facts is that nationally, every 29 seconds, a baby is born into poverty. Every 29 seconds. And here in Massachusetts, a little more than 1 out of every 7 children, about 15%, live in poverty. That's more than 206,000 children. And as perspective, the poverty rate reflects an annual income of approximately $22,800 for a family of 4. I don't know how they can possibly live on that. And so most often, despite the love and best efforts of parents and grandparents, children in these families lack the essentials they need to thrive, learn, and succeed. Now, obviously, we don't fit into that category, but this is the area that you're concentrating on in order to help these people.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right, then tell me then what you have done so far, because I know you've gone in and you've met with the governor, along with the other 380, I presume they all showed up. And then what have you done from then to now? Can you put it in a timeline?
Well, when we went to the State House on January 26th, buses took us to the State House in Boston, and we were greeted there with a speech from Governor Patrick and other speakers. And then we were sent out to different places across Boston, like the Greater Boston Food Bank and different homeless shelters. I was sent to the Hennigan Center in Jamaica Plain, and I was specifically sent to the Early Learning Center, which was really in rough shape when we got there, and we painted murals to put up on the walls of the Early Learning Center for...
Is this all 351 of you?
Well, we were broken up into different groups sent all over Boston. And then we also helped make like packets for kids to learn how to read and write. So we helped cut out flashcards. And Patriots player Nate Solder, he helped with that, cutting out the flashcards.
Mm. Is he as big and strong as you imagined?
Yeah, he was really
a little bigger than us, right?
Mm-hmm, a little bigger.
Okay, so we'll get back to the timeline in a minute, because I want to bring Mrs. Kemet in as to how you were the one that got chosen from the Furnace Brook Middle School. Maureen?
So Project 351 charges the school leaders and teachers to choose a student who has compassion, kindness, humility, and generosity. So we asked some of the 8th grade teachers, we have 3 clusters in the 8th grade, and we asked some teachers to recommend some students. And we also asked the teachers that, maybe not all the content teachers, but the off-cluster teachers and some prior years teachers, to have a good feel and of who the teachers would like to see represent their school. With the class size, we have a large 300 and approximately 50 students in the 8th grade. That's really a difficult thing.
Yeah, it would be.
There are so many natural leaders and students within Furnace Brook that are always giving, and they participate in a lot of the drives that we have to help communities or families in need. But one name kept getting repeated, and that was Dan. And he was one of the first names that the 3 leaders came up with in the building. So he fit all the criteria. And what we wanted to have a student that we knew would embrace it and make it their own, and that would be a great representative for not just Furnace Brook, but really for the Marshfield community. And since the moment Dan was asked, I met with Dan, let him know about the project, that he was our representative. First, I did speak with his mom to make sure it would be something that they'd be interested in and that he could attend, because it was a specific day in January. And they embraced it from the moment I contacted them. And when Dan came back after that Saturday, I saw him first thing in the morning. I don't even know if he remembers, but he was radiant about it, and he was excited. And we never look back. He has really taken something that could be just that one weekend, and he didn't have to continue any further, and he has made it a full-time commitment for him and his family, which is wonderful. So we were trying to support him, and really, we have a lot of pride in what he's doing for us.
And that was a difficult decision when you have over 300 youngsters.
It was, and we have some students that are very socially conscious and have natural leadership skills, but Dan was the right choice.
Right. Well, it'll be nice someday if you have some of those students who are doing something to, again, get them on this show
Sure.
so people in town know that there are some great kids doing wonderful things for the town of Marshfield.
Absolutely.
Right. All right, so she had a big decision along with the other administrators and the teachers, and you met with Governor Patrick, and you're back home now. What was the first thing that you had to do in your timeline?
Well, the first event is the spring greening, which is the clothing drive that I'm doing, and they've basically coached me through the entire thing. I have conference calls every Tuesday, and they help me each step of the way. So finding a group of people that wants to help you, telling people about it, and basically everything that I need.
So in other words, they didn't say, okay, Dan, that's it, go to it. They're still behind you all the way?
No, yeah, they're definitely helping me all
And
the way.
how about your coach, who's sitting over here in the audience, right? Your mom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's helped me a lot too.
Moms do that. Besides cooking and cleaning, they're there for their youngsters all the time. All right, so that's the first part. There are other things that you had to consider in your timeline.
Well, later on we're going to be doing other events, but
Yep. Okay, then what have you done to get people to help you?
to get people to help me, I just asked people who I really thought would want to participate in helping, like, distribute flyers and things like that. And a lot of people said, yeah, and they would help me. And now I have a pretty big group.
You got a good crew?
9 or 10 people
Yeah.
that want to help me.
That you know will do a lot of work for
Yeah,
you? Yeah.
that are really excited about it.
That's the key. And I know you're also on the student council. What are some of the other things you do in the middle school?
I'm also on advisory team, so we plan different events for the 8th grade and the rest of the school. And then I'm also in the I'm a web leader, so at the beginning of the year, we welcomed all the new incoming 6th graders, and we helped them really, like, fit in, and yeah.
Well, I think that's key, because they're coming from the elementary schools into the 6th grade, which is really quite a jump, as I remember, because I taught 6th grade for a long time, and we had our 8th graders too in the Hanover Middle School, help them. Actually, we had grade 5 in our middle school, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's a nice link to have this happen, and I presume it helps the 6th graders.
It helps a lot. WEB stands for Where Everyone Belongs.
Right.
And where there's 5 elementary schools who are transitioning into one of the largest elementary schools, middle schools on the South Shore,
Right.
excuse me, it can be daunting and scary, not just for the students, but also for the parents.
That's true.
So this is a great, they meet just before school starts with the web leaders. The web leaders are trained through two of our guidance counselors have went through trainings and lead this program, Mrs. Damphouse and Mrs. Swan, and they do a really good job preparing the 8th graders as well as the 6th graders.
Right.
And the web leaders break the 6th graders into smaller groups so they get to know them a little bit better during this particular day in August. And then throughout the year, the web leaders trained to handle certain tasks to help the 6th graders, and they meet with them fairly regularly throughout the year
Right.
to help with the transition.
Right.
And it's been a really, really helpful program, and parent and student feedback has consistently told us it's really helped with transition.
It does.
Yes.
But next year you're going to the 9th grade, so you'll be on the bottom of the barrel again, won't you?
Yeah, I will be.
But you'll know how it is, and I'm sure the seniors help the 9th graders, I would think.
They have somewhat of a similar program. I actually am not familiar with the name of it. This is my first year in Marshfield, but
Right.
they do somewhat of a similar program
Right.
to help transition in. Dan will be a natural fitting in, though.
He
I've
will.
already talked to the principal about him.
Have you?
He will embrace Dan and all of his hard work and citizenship.
Well, and the good thing about that, Dan will have, what, 3 years in a brand new high school?
He sure will.
Oh, that'll be neat. Yeah, I will be up there with the brand new studio too from Marshfield Cable Television. We can hardly wait for that.
That would be great.
Let's get back then to what you've done so far. You've now gathered all your buddies around you, and what's your next step?
Well, next is I'm printing flyers that I'm having all my entire team put in mailboxes in their neighborhoods. So hopefully through that I'll have the most awareness in Marshfield, so the most people know what the what I'm doing so that I'll have the most people dropping off items.
Well, now you've been in the Marshfield Mariner.